What's up, YouTube? Goratha here yet again with yet another Inquisitor build. Little backstory on this build: it's originally made in I'm Exile's Melee Only League. The character was meant to be an experiment to see if I could make a Molten Strike character that could compete with an Omni champion, and to some extent, I think I succeeded, especially when you consider the budget of the character. The character uses a one alchemy weapon, and has done all endgame content except the Feared. It died before getting there, unfortunately, mostly due to my own hubris. A quick disclaimer before I get into this, though: this probably won't be the fastest character ever to maps, and it most definitely is a hipster build. So if your goal is to be super rich or be the first to Ubers, I would strongly recommend you don't start as this build. However, with that being said, and while it was a struggle over a while early on, once I did get this build up and running, it was extremely satisfying to play, and one of my favorite builds this league in general. Okay, now that is out of the way, let's quickly go over the Molten Strike gym mechanics so you can understand why we go for certain passive nodes and gear choices. Molten Strike is a melee skill that has two main components: an initial melee damage hit, which scales off melee damage, and a projectile attack, which fires projectiles and scales off projectile damage. This build mainly focuses on the latter, as do most Molten Strike builds, because the projectiles can overlap. Let's talk about that. Normally the projectiles spread out quite a bit, but if you add in a decent amount of less projectile speed and reduced projectile speed, they begin to overlap more. However, this does mean your clear speed will suffer because you are hitting in a smaller area. Okay, let's talk about the passive tree. Everyone in the comments seemed to really enjoy what I did last time with the Spark video, so I've decided to try to replicate it. However, it will be a bit harder with this build because it's kind of all over the place, and it requires some fiddling and respecing to make it work. And again, it is most definitely a hipster build. As you can see, we're an Inquisitor and we have point blank. Okay, this is the endgame tree. I figured I would show the endgame tree off first, so you guys could take a look and see what the endgame tree looks like before we actually start looking at how we get there. And yeah, okay, so let's actually make a new tree. Let me reset everything. Okay, so from level 1, it's pretty similar to the Spark build actually. You grab all the damage to start, grab precision, attack cast speed is always good, grab the life, and the damage while we're here. The only difference between this and the Spark build is we're grabbing Divine Fervor, because it's melee crit strike and attack damage. After that, we go in a weird direction. You might be wondering why we're going over here, because we didn't actually have any of this in the endgame tree. Where we're grabbing EO and Lucky Lightning Mastery and Minion Attack Speed. Spiritual Command allows us to scale Minion Attack Speed, which gives us attack speed from the Spiritual Command node. You also might be wondering why we take Lucky Lightning damage when we're playing a Molten Strike build, which deals fire damage, but we'll get into that later when we talk about the gearing choices for early leveling. After that, we get Period of Flesh, and this is where you could probably grab Sovereignty, so you can run Determination, but it's not exact science. You can get this whenever you want to run Determination. Let me go over here, grab Divine Judgment. Redemption as well is really good. Filter Aid for attack and cast speed, more damage. Scales really well with Spiritual Command. I actually probably would grab Spiritual Command, or Filter Aid before Divine Judgment, just to get you more attack speed, which will help a lot early on. We got Devotion for some more life. And this is the really early game tree. This is how it would be like when you're leveling. After that, we have a pretty long trek to get the next nodes we want. We're going to grab some life while we're traveling. More life over here from Juggernaut. And Call to Arms. Once we get Call to Arms, we're going to be using Ancestral Cry. We're probably going to be using it earlier as well, but this will make it easy to just left click and just not have to worry about it anymore. And the big node, Tribal Fury. This is when the build starts to feel really good, and when you're going to drop the Ancestral Call support. And you grab the strike skills, which target additional enemies, can do so from 30% further away. This is really good mastery, which will help a lot for clear speed. Most people drop Tribal Fury when they get the additional strike from the implicit on the Eldritch mods, but honestly, it's questionable to me even drop it because it helps so much with clear speed having the attack mastery, but that's just a personal preference. You can test it out later if you want. And after that, we go over here. You can grab the Fortify node here if you want. I personally didn't grab it this early, but if you want and you're playing hardcore and you want some Fortify, this is a good time to grab it. And we path way over here, and we get Life and Mana Leech. This is one of the main issues with this build, actually. I'll talk about more when we talk about the gearing, but Mana Leech is a big problem for this build. Again, I'll talk about it when we talk about the gear, but this solves a big problem we have early on. After that, we got Point Blank, which is the entire reason we're traveling way over here in the middle of nowhere. This will help you damage out quite a lot of Molten Strike, as the projectiles don't travel very far. It's pretty much a 30% damage multiplier. Basically a support gem. At this point, you can grab Graceful Assault. This will give you Onslaught on kill, which will be nice for mapping. There's also, you can use Death Rush, which again, I'll talk about some of the gearing options later. After that, you grab Master of the Arena, Bravery, and Art of the Gladiator. It gives you some nice attack speed and melee strike. Let's path this way, actually. Okay. This is in general how the non-crit, non-mace build looks. Once you have this set up, you could probably start going for the mace, which, again, we'll talk about the gear in a second. But we're going to be using a mace. And we grab the mace, and we grab the mace chill node. This is probably one of the most broken masters in the game. Extremely underrated. And yeah, this is the crit, or non-crit, mace tree. Around level 80. Once you start to go crit, you're going to have to do some respeccing. So you're going to want to grab these nodes here to travel this way. And then, once you actually get your Uber Lab, and you grab a Neville Judgment, you can drop all these nodes over here. EO's gone, Lightning Mastery's gone, Spiritual Command's gone, which means you're probably most likely going to have to drop Spiritual Aid and Redemption as well. So it is a bit of a respec here. After you do that, you grab Pain Forger, which is a bunch of crit and crit multi for maces. And then you grab Lethality, more crit and crit multi for projectile attacks. And we grab Marked for Death with the Mastery, 10% chance to finish out on hit. We still have a couple more points left. I really prefer getting the Blind node, because the Blind node gives you a ton of crit. Blind in general is really good for crit builds and attack builds in general, because as most people didn't know, the new Blind actually makes it so you need less accuracy, which is another problem with this build. We're going to need some accuracy. This helps solve it pretty nicely, actually. After this, you could probably grab the Suppression node whenever you want. Get the crit mastery as well. It's just very good synergy. And this is more or less the early crit tree. And yeah, at this point, you're going to transition to the endgame tree, which is what we looked at early on. Pretty much the only difference between that tree and the endgame tree is we have the Golden Blood node, which honestly you could probably take early if you wanted to. Kind of preference. It's a really solid node to take. I would probably grab it early in hardcore. But anyways, we have Ribcage Crusher. We have some Drill nodes, which are pretty important for this build. Drill nodes are really good. And we grab all 3 of them, which is a decent amount of points. We also grabbed Steadfast because we're playing hardcore. You don't have to do this if you're playing softcore. There's a couple damage options you can grab. Like I said before, you can grab Graceful Assault. Also, Adjacent Amnosity is really good for bossing. I didn't have it for mapping, but it's really good for bossing in general. So you can grab that as well. Yeah, this is more or less the tree. The very endgame tree. As you can see, we have 5.5 million DPS. It's pretty solid, especially once we show the gear off, this will look a lot more impressive than you think. And yeah, this is the tree. I added a cluster tree as well. You guys are interested in looking at it? I wasn't too impressed with going clusters, but it is an option. And we have a Glorious Vanity tree, which I wouldn't recommend this either, especially with the new belt that's being added to the game. I'd probably just use that belt if you want like some sort of Corrupted Soul effect. Yeah, those are all the trees. I'll link them in the description so you guys can take a look at all of them if you want. And yeah, these are the passive trees. Now let's get into the gear. And this is the most interesting part about this build, actually. As you can see, we're using a Frost Breath. This is an item most people probably don't even bother picking up, or they always vendor it. Pretty much a 1 alchemy item in Trade League. Not even that rare and stuff. Pretty easy to get all around. You might be wondering why we're using this mace. If you go back to the mace nodes, we get all damage of maces and scepters chill, which means we're always getting the double damage to chilled enemies portion of this weapon. And we're basically scaling a bunch of flat. We're using Smite, we're using Wrath. We're just going all on flat damage, which is it's scaled twice because of the double damage, right? It's basically the cheap version of Paradoxica. Now, Paradoxica is a better option endgame, especially when you have the budget to do so. But this is what we went with early, and I really like it. I think it's really cool. You chill every boss for 30%, you do good damage. The main downside to this weapon is how slow it is. It is a bit slow early on. You're going to want to have friendly charges. You're going to want to have onslaught. You don't have a lot of attack speed. That's part of the reason why we went so much attack speed early on from like the spiritual command and whatnot. But yeah, so there's the weapon. Also, you can kind of double corrupt them and get like attack speed implicit or like melee implicit, like melee fortify implicit. Pretty easy to do that as well. Go to the shield. Oh, before I move on to the shield, we should talk about the early leveling. So before you actually use Frost Breath and really early on, one of the main issues with going Frost Breath or Mace for Inquisitor is you don't actually have any mana leech. So you end up having to use a Claw early on or a Mana Pot. I would recommend just using a Claw early on. Claws are really nice feeling anyways, so just use a Claw. Save yourself a lot of trouble. Just get a Claw with some flat lightning damage. This is also why I went for the Lightning Mastery. Use a flat lightning claw with added lightning. You get a lot of extra damage from the Lightning Mastery. It'll do nice in general. And you have a lot of life getting hit. You're never going to die if you're attacking. Especially early leveling. You're never going to run out of mana. It's just all around a way more quality of life. That's what I would do for early leveling. Let's go on to the shield. Now I probably would use a shield from Act 6 onwards. You could use a shield early on too if you want, like if you're playing hardcore. But yeah, for the shield you just want suppression, life, fizz reduction, just any of that. Like it doesn't have to be too complicated. Just get a shield, spam harvest on it until you get suppression. That's it. Suppression, life, pretty much it. The helm, pretty similar. This is just reforged life from harvest. And we crafted Fizz Taken Fire, which is really good for this build actually. Taking Fizz Taken Fire scales really well with high armor. You won't be taking like any fizz damage. You can see like in the clips here we're gonna show, won't be taking any damage from slams at all. Like Shaper Slam does nothing. That's pretty much why. This armor plus Fizz Taken Fire. Molten Strike fires through additional projectiles. You definitely want this enchant if you can get it. This is why this build is a little not SSF friendly, because the enchant is very big. Well, it's not required. It just helps a lot. And yep, the implicits aren't perfect, but we have some reduced shock effect, which is how we're dealing with shock on this character. Not bad. Chest, pretty similar to the shield, except you want the Gravicious Craft. Just suppression, life, Gravicious Craft. That's all it is. For the gloves, we actually recommend getting some temple gloves. So there's a temple atlas node. It gives you temple items every time you kill an architect, which is like basically get 3 architects per alpha mission, right? And they're pretty common. You can actually find any of the 3, like lightning, I think it's like lightning shock. You do like more crit against shocked enemies. You have like the cold one. You do like more damage against chilled enemies. You can actually harvest change that res, and it'll change the damage type as well. And like I said, we're scaling flat damage because we're using Frost Breath, so you want these flat damage gloves, ideally. And the important part about the implicit is the strike skills targets additional enemy nearby. This one lets you drop the tribal fear if you want, but like I talked about earlier, you don't have to. It's actually really good close speed to have additional strikes, and the attack mastery is also really good. Or there's that option there. For the boots, we went with like a multi-modded, cannot be frozen, cannot be chilled boots with the suppression and life. Nothing too crazy. We had Alice Boss in your presence drops brittle ground while moving, but I think the character died before I ever managed to even use it, so kind of irrelevant for the clips you're gonna see. But yeah, this would have like doubled our damage. It would have been nice to have. For the neck, it's just flat damage, crit multi, wed. The neck is where you're getting most of your damage. You're getting like all the good damage stuff on neck. And we anointed Blacksmith Clout, which is a bunch of crit multi from maces. I think it's the best one by far. You could do a Jason Animosity too, I guess, if you really wanted to. Like if you want to spec it. I wouldn't recommend that though. I'd just go for Blacksmith Clout. Rings, 2 Vermilion rings. We have some reduced shock effect here. This is how we dealt with shock. This plus the helm basically makes us immune to shock. And some accuracy. Accuracy is kind of important in this build. You're going to need to get accuracy on at least one piece of gear. The Dazzling Strike node with blind helps a lot with the accuracy. I'll show you real quick what it looks like if you take a blind off. It's still pretty good because it has so much accuracy, but as you can see, blind does give a bunch of accuracy. Let me take the ring off so I can show you even better. 90, so it's giving a 6% hit chance. Pretty huge. But yes, you're gonna want at least one piece of gear with accuracy on it. Then this like wed, res, life, flat damage, all that good stuff. Nothing too crazy. The bell is just res, life, and wed, or elemental damage for attack skills. For jewels are actually pretty important for this build. You're gonna want to look out for jewels that have flat damage, life, and crit multi. Like any amount of flat damage helps a lot because of the way Frost Breath scales. Or later on, if you want Paradoxica, you want flat damage with swords. The same thing, kind of. The flask, like I talked about before in the other video, you want gain charges when you get hit by an enemy. You can run Silver Flask. That'll be a good way to get onslaught if you want it for bossing. Nothing too crazy. Ataxia on your Quicksilver. That'll help you a lot as well. And more jewels. Mantra of Flames. This is another option. It's not like insane. It's just a decent budget option. You can just buy a Mantra of Flames. It'll be like a decent jewel in itself. It's not crazy, but just a good option. And yeah, that's the gear. Again, nothing too crazy. Pretty budget. This suppression life gear mostly. Now let's talk about the gym links. I'll talk about the early links first, and then I'll talk about Molten Strike when you get to the later acts and you get to early maps. And then finally, I'll talk about the endgame links. So for early on with Molten Strike, you're pretty much going to be running Ancestral Call until you get Tribal Fury. And I would run Added Lightning when you have the Lightning Mastery probably, and Onslaught. You can faster attacks as well, especially once you get Frost Breath on. Faster attacks will be quite nice. And then you have your Flame Dash, Shield Charge, faster attacks for your movement shills. You run Cast Down Shaken Molten Shell. Pretty much as soon as you get Determination on, and you can run Cast Down Shaken, you run this, basically. Early on, you run Warbanner in Act 1. You can probably run Vitality if you want, but I don't think it's really necessary if you're using a Claw. And you can run Hail of Ash early on with Hail of Thunder. Later on, you're not going to be running either one of these gems, but early on, it's nice for damage. You pretty much can run Ancestral Protector in Act 1, and then you add on Swiper's Mark and Mark and Hit later as well. Ancestral Cries in Act 1 as well. And later on, you switch Molten Strike gem links into pretty much faster attacks, elemental damage with attacks, and ML8. There's going to be a lot better. ML8 is kind of similar to Added Lightning, so you have to like fiddle around with that. Maybe Added Lightning is better when you have the Lightning Mastery, but later on you're going to want to use ML8 probably. And that brings us to the endgame links. This is when you actually have crit links. So this is like early maps before crit, and then this is the crit links. So you had crit damage in, crit strikes, and the same 4 link. Now with crit strikes, you can probably end up dropping it once you get brittle. I didn't actually get to it on this character, but you can probably drop crit strikes and grab another gem link. Like say, like Hyperthermia is a pretty good link. Inspiration, Hyperthermia, Awaken at lightning damage. There's like a lot of decent links. You probably just have to look at PUB when you're actually doing that. And you have your movement skills. I like to put Life Tap on the movement skills for as soon as I can. That'll help a lot. Later on, you're gonna be running Smite. Once you get Frost Breath, you can't run Smite when using a Claw, but once you get the Frost Breath on, you want to run Smite for the increased duration. And we're running Wrath and Determination in this character. Wrath, Determination, and Precision is our auras in this character. And later on, once you have crit, you switch Sniper's Mark with Assassin's Mark. Early on, using Sniper's Mark. And then you go crit, you switch to Assassin's Mark. Pretty simple. You can pretty much use Blood Rage the entire time. I didn't mention it earlier, but Blood Rage is definitely good to run the whole time. And Defiance Banner. And that's pretty much all the links, I think. And that is the Frostbreath Molten Strike Inquisitor guide. Again, this is a very hipster build, but it can do all content and it feels really good later on. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. I keep forgetting to say that. I'm pretty bad at shilling myself. But yeah, anyways, see ya!